Hello, Sophie and Emily. I have someone who's asked a question re child therapy. What if you see behavioural traits in a child that you think might be problematic for them when they're older? My middle son is 16. He's always pretty happy and easygoing as long as he's fed, slept, and exercised. His older sister and younger brother are more demanding, but he can't express his feelings, wants, needs. I'm not sure he even knows what they are. At the moment, that means he'll go with the flow totally and then seemingly from a surface calm, go 0 to 100 in a second and then back to 0 pretty quickly. I've talked to him about it. He hates the idea of therapy precisely because he finds it so hard to talk. My sense is I need to keep working on it with him to get him to identify and express himself, but it's quite hard. My real worry is the impact it will have on future relationship, career, when he finds it impossible to stay calm and reasonable when he wants to. I think also because it's indicative of a lack of confidence, self-esteem, and self-worth.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I wonder if the place to start is by framing it, at least with him, as slightly differently, not to kind of get him to therapy, but to actually, I think the starting place is to understand where he feels that he is. I think that you want to be curious with him about how he sees himself, what he's interested in, what he's worried about, what he's interested in relationships. And I understand that he's 16 and he may just not want to talk to you about any of that stuff. And that's okay. When you're thinking about your own concerns with a 16-year-old, I think what is probably most helpful for him is to experience you as wanting to know what life is like for him. Because I think that most teenagers feel incredibly misunderstood, and that is just part of being a teenager as well. But I think if you sort of take a top down approach of this is what I think is happening and this is what I think you need to do to fix it, I think you're going to increase the polarization where you're sort of saying more and more you need to learn how to manage your
Something's wrong with you.
emotions. And even coming from a place of love and concern and wanting the best for him. But I think he's then going to go more and more to a place of like, I'm fine, just sort of leave me
Back
alone.
off. Yeah.
So I think you kind of want to meet him where he is in order to sort of be able to have an open conversation. I also heard you sort of say your concerns about him in the future. And obviously, this is a really short nugget. We don't have a lot of information, but at 16 your brain is still learning to regulate, so it's really common to not be able to keep yourself calm at 16. And I suppose it just depends on the level of 0 to 100 and also the places, right? Like if he's going from 0 to 100 at school and it's causing him lots of problems and he's being suspended, or, that is different to him going to 0 to 100 at home when one of his siblings have really irritated him. And if it's more the latter, I think the more you can take your future worries out of it, the more you're going to be able to connect with him where he is, because you're not investing all this like anxiety, which is your anxiety. It's not, doesn't sound like it's his anxiety, into the conversation. And being able to generalize things. Sometimes people find it hard to do this. Is that true of you? That kind of thing can be helpful. And another thing is that you say that he's got these siblings who are really, did you say, more demanding, I think? And that makes me wonder too about his sort of strategy in life has maybe been there's not enough space for three people to be demanding, and this is just the way that he's found to adapt, and finding a way to acknowledge that might be helpful. And then I think the last thing is just, I think it can always be helpful as a parent to think about yourself in this situation. Like, what was your experience of being a teenager and how do you feel like it has affected you as you've grown older? How much of this is coming sort of from your own worries or insecurities or things that you would have wanted for yourself or wished that were different? That sort of being able to separate what's mine and what's yours is impossible, but worth thinking about.
Examining.
And Lisa D'Amour on Instagram is very good about parenting teens. So follow Lisa D'Amour. She's very good.
We'll put her in the show notes too.
Emily, she's not left us a lot to say, has she, Mum? She kind of
No,
nailed all the counts.
Good. done a comprehensive
Sorry,
answer.
done a full cover.
It's good.
So I'm gonna add a little sort of dribble at the end of the meat of what Emily said, which
I haven't got anything to add at all. I haven't got
I
a
know she's
clue.
just ticking them off from my head. I was like, I'm gonna have nothing left to say. Mum and Em, we all said before, but to eye conversations are helpful. So wanting to have any of these kind of conversations, then in the car, or if they go for walks, but probably a car is more likely, where there's kind of intensity and confrontational kind of quality of sitting down with things lighter and you can look out the window, it just reduces the intensity. So that's quite a helpful format for any of those kind of conversations that you want to have. And then the other thing, which this is borrowed from Emily in another conversation, is that lots of good conversations happen in relationship, right? So time with him being interested in what he's interested in, whether that's a form of sport or reading or what he enjoys, working out how to just spend time together. And then often off the back of those, you have a kind of connection where it's maybe easier to touch on some of these conversations. Teenagers are often pretty withdrawn, particularly boys. And so just even finding a way of spending time together when he's in this phase, even if you never get to the conversation, it's being interested in his inner world. So in the way that Emily said of like feeling misunderstood, just the experience of you being interested in what his inner world is like, irrelevant of all the emotional conversations whatsoever, will be an experience that's kind of helpful for him of like, oh, she's interested in what my inner world is like, or what I'm interested in and what I like and what I don't like. And you can have much gentler conversations about, oh, what do you like and what you don't like, which are kind of the sort of similar versions of like, oh, what is it like inside? What do I enjoy and what do I not enjoy? So that would be my only additions. And actually, there is a book called How Do You Hug a Cactus by Sheila Redfern, which is all about this. It's about how to connect with your teenagers, how to help them manage emotions. And
Brilliant.
so you can look that up. And I had a conversation with her for this podcast, which will be, I don't know when it's released, but sometime relatively soon. So I'd really recommend her book. It's called How Do You Hug a Cactus?
I have really nothing to add. The only thought that came to mind was thinking about birth order and family systems, and whether, I mean, if you two have an idea, is there a playful way, like if you're all having supper together or doing something together, that you can look at how you each are in the birth order and the roles that somehow you've assigned yourself or that have been assigned to you, to help you recognize that actually you may have denied yourself a version of yourself because you think it's taken by another sibling. It doesn't relate directly to the question, but I think it can help expand your understanding of yourself when you kind of can see that within a family you may have decided you're this version of yourself because somebody else has it.
A really nice suggestion at this moment. I can't think of a fun round the table way of doing that. I'm scratching my head on that one. I certainly think
Maybe there isn't one.
maybe there is, but the only thing I can think is not necessarily round the table fun game thing, but modelling is helpful, right? Isn't it? So if someone who sent in the question has a sense of like where their role was in their family, those are conversations where she can talk about her family of origin, which just allows people inevitably think about those things for themselves when you talk about them. That's part of what this podcast is about, right? Is that we take one example and then we can all take it away and go, oh, how does that apply to me? Yeah. And with younger teens, not so much with a 16-year-old, you can watch stuff with them and then talk about it. So like if you have like a 12, 13-year-old and you watch like Sex Education on Netflix and a lot of things come up in the course of
That's
that,
so
then
great.
that kind of opens a conversation. Or like I know, Mum, in your book you talked about a family who will watch Modern Family together, and it was something that everybody enjoyed, but also sort of can sometimes stimulate those conversations, like Sophie was saying in a previous question, in a really generalized way that feels less loaded.
This is a tangent, but I remember on a holiday, all of us playing a game, and you were all older, that we sort of go to a place and we were running a hotel and we had to all take roles of who did what in the hotel, who was the kind of front of house. And that in some way helped kind of look at who does what role. And I think we even thought about different roles that we had in that. I mean, maybe that's just a crazy
I
thing.
think I remember being like, I'm not sure I'm particularly useful in the hotel business. So I don't know what that says about me and our family.
I don't remember that. I can't even remember what the role that was given to me. I just remember
No.
we had a whole supper kind of talking about that, which was funny.
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
There are kind of
It's
imaginative
funny.
ways of looking at each other and being able to kind of see how you're seen, and also then be an advocate for yourself.
And just the final thing, which is
Yeah,
your son is 16. It might be that none of these conversations are of any interest to him right now, and just sort of acknowledging that that's okay. And if that's the case, doing more of what we sort of talked about in terms of yourself and reflecting on yourself, and what Sophie was saying about just being curious about what he's interested in, I think would be the place to start, and trying to take some of your sort of projected anxiety out of the relationship.
Thank you so much for asking your question, and thank you, Emily and Sophie. We hope it's really helpful. If others of you have questions, do please send me a DM on Instagram, and do please share and subscribe and rate the podcast. And thank you very, very much for listening. Until next time, thanks.